The massive cargo bay of Station Alpha 7 echoed with the sound of metal hitting metal. Captain Marcus Webb stood with his arms crossed, staring at the pile of junk that floated before him. The artificial gravity in this section was weak, making the twisted pieces of metal drift slowly like dead fish in water. "This is what they give us?" Chief Engineer Lisa Torres asked, her voice flat with disbelief. She kicked a bent piece of hull plating, sending it spinning into the darkness. 20 years of service, and this is our reward?" Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that complaining would not change anything. The Galactic Alliance had made their position clear. Humans were the newest members, and newest members got the worst jobs. It was the way things worked in space politics. Behind them, the rest of the crew gathered in small groups. Navigator Tom Rivers was running calculations on his tablet, trying to figure out if they could even build something that would fly. Weapons specialist Jake Morrison was poking through a pile of broken alien guns, shaking his head at the damage. Dr. Elena Park stood near the medical supplies, which were mostly empty boxes and outdated equipment. The sound of heavy footsteps made everyone turn around. 3 alien representatives walked into the cargo bay, their faces showing the same expression Marcus had seen too many times before. They thought humans were funny. The first alien was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His name was difficult to pronounce, so the humans just called him Blue. The second was shorter but much wider, with thick gray skin like a rock. They called him Rocky. The third looked almost human except for the extra eyes on the sides of his head. He was known as Four Eyes. "So," Blue said, his voice carrying that tone adults used when talking to children, "how do you like your new ship?" "Jake." Morrison looked up from the broken weapons. "Ship? I don't see a ship, I see a garbage dump." The 3 aliens laughed. It was not a kind sound. "That is the point," Rocky said, his voice deep and rough. "You humans think you are so clever. You think you can compete with races that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. This will teach you your place." Four Eyes walked over to a piece of twisted metal that might have once been part of an engine. "The Galactic Alliance Defense Fleet requires all member species to contribute 1 warship. This is your contribution." He gestured at the floating junk. "We followed the rules. We gave you materials for a ship." "Materials that were thrown away 50 years ago," Lisa said, anger creeping into her voice. "Waste not, want not," Blue replied with another laugh. "Besides, humans are supposed to be good at making something from nothing, right? That is what your people say about themselves." Marcus stepped forward. The aliens were bigger than him, but he did not back down. "We will build your ship, and it will meet every requirement in the Alliance Charter." "Oh, I am sure it will," Four Eyes said. "The question is, how long will it last? I give it 10 minutes, in real combat, before it falls apart." Rocky pulled out a small device that looked like a phone. "I am starting a betting pool. 10 minutes seems too generous. I say 5 minutes before complete system failure." 3 minutes, Blue added, tapping the device. "These humans have never seen real space combat. They will panic and make mistakes." 1 minute, Four Eyes said with confidence. "The ship will break apart the moment they try to fire the weapons." The 3 aliens continued their betting, talking about the humans like they were not even there. Marcus felt his hands form fists, but he kept them at his sides. Getting angry would not help. It would only prove what the aliens already believed about humans. Finally, the aliens finished their game and started to leave. Blue stopped at the entrance to the cargo bay and turned back. "Oh, one more thing," he said with fake politeness. "You have 6 months to build your ship and report for duty. If you are not ready by then, humanity will be removed from the Alliance for failure to meet obligations. I am sure you understand." The 3 aliens left, their laughter echoing down the corridor until it faded away. The cargo bay fell silent, except for the hum of the station's air recyclers. The human crew stood among the floating junk, each person lost in their own thoughts. Tom Rivers was the first to speak. 6 months to build a working warship from this mess. The math does not look good, Captain. Math never stopped humans before, Marcus replied. He started walking around the cargo bay, looking at each piece of junk with new eyes. Lisa, what do you see when you look at this stuff? The chief engineer followed him, examining the broken parts more carefully. Well, this piece here used to be part of a Voltani cruiser. Good metal just needs reshaping. This engine core is from a trader ship. Old design, but reliable. These weapons... She picked up one of the broken guns Jake had been looking at. These are interesting. 3 different alien technologies mixed together. Can we use any of it? Captain, we can use all of it. It will not be pretty, and it will not be standard, but... Lisa smiled for the first time since they had arrived. I think we can build something that will surprise a few people. Jake Morrison walked over carrying an armload of broken weapons. These guns are damaged, but the basic principles are sound. If we can figure out how they work, we might be able to build something even better. Dr. Park joined them, holding a medical scanner that was missing half its parts. This equipment is old, but the sensors are still good. Maybe we can use them for something else. Marcus looked around at his crew. They were not the best and brightest the human military had to offer. Most of them were here because they had nowhere else to go. Jake had been demoted for fighting. Lisa had been passed over for promotion too many times. Tom had a drinking problem. Elena had made mistakes that ended her research career. They were rejects, just like the junk they had been given to work with. But as Marcus watched his crew start to sort through the alien garbage with growing excitement, he began to think that maybe the Alliance had made a mistake. Maybe they had given the wrong humans the wrong materials. All right, people, Marcus said, clapping his hands together. We have 6 months to build a ship. Let's show these aliens what humans can do with their trash. The crew got to work, and the sound of metal on metal filled the cargo bay once again. But this time it was the sound of building, not destruction. The aliens had given them scrap. Now they would see what humans could make from it. 3 months had passed since the aliens had dumped their garbage on the humans. The cargo bay of Station Alpha 7 no longer looked like a junkyard. It looked like something much stranger. Captain Marcus Webb stood on a platform made from welded hull plates, watching his crew work below. The ship they were building did not look like any vessel in the Alliance fleet. It was ugly, with mismatched parts sticking out at odd angles. But it was starting to look like it might actually fly. Captain, Lisa Torres called from inside what would become the engine room. Come look at this. Marcus climbed down a ladder made from salvaged support beams. The engine room was a maze of pipes, wires, and machinery that seemed to have no plan. But Lisa moved through it like she knew exactly where everything belonged. See this? She pointed to a large device that hummed with power. This is the main engine from that old trader ship. Normally, it would power a vessel half our size. But watch this. She pressed a few buttons on a control panel made from 5 different alien computer systems. The humming grew louder, and lights began flashing in a pattern that looked almost like music. I connected it to these 3 smaller engines from the mining equipment. Alone, none of them are powerful enough. But together, they create something new. Lisa grinned like a child with a new toy. We have twice the power output of a standard Alliance cruiser. Will it explode? Marcus asked. Probably not, Lisa replied. I built in 17 different safety systems. If one fails, another takes over. The aliens always use single backup systems. We use multiple backups for our backups. Marcus nodded and climbed back up to check on the other work areas. In what would become the weapons bay, Jake Morrison was surrounded by parts that looked like they came from a dozen different species. How are the guns coming along? Marcus asked. Jake looked up from a device he was assembling with tools that did not seem right for the job. Well, Captain, I have good news and strange news. The good news is that I figured out how all these alien weapons work. The strange news is that I think I can make them work better. He picked up a long, thin weapon that glowed with blue energy. This is a Voltani plasma rifle. Very precise but low power. This, he held up a thick, heavy gun, is a Krell mass driver. High power, but slow to fire. And this, he showed Marcus a weapon that looked like it was made of crystal, is a Nexari. Energy beam. Fast and powerful, but it overheats quickly. So we use the best parts of each? Better than that, Captain. I found a way to make them work together. Jake connected several cables between the three weapons. The Voltani targeting system guides the Krell projectiles, while the Nixari power core charges both systems. One trigger, 3 weapons firing, at the same time. He pulled the trigger. The weapon fired with a sound like thunder, and a hole appeared in a piece of test metal across the room. The hole was perfectly round and went completely through 6 inches of alien steel. The Alliance weapons are designed to do one thing very well, Jake explained. Human weapons are designed to do many things good enough. I think good enough times 3 is better than very well times 1. Marcus left Jake to his work and found Tom Rivers in the navigation center. The navigator was surrounded by screens showing star charts, but the displays looked wrong. Instead of the clean, organized readouts Marcus expected, the screens showed information in layers with different colors and symbols mixed together. Tom, what is all this? Navigation data, Captain, but not like the Alliance does it. Tom pointed to different parts of the display. See, the Alliance uses one type of sensor for stellar navigation, another for local objects, and a third for communications. But Dr. Park found something interesting in that old medical equipment. As if summoned by her name, Dr. Elena Park appeared beside them. She was holding a device that looked like a medical scanner, but it had been changed so much that Marcus could barely recognize it. Captain, this scanner could see inside a patient's body by reading different types of energy. But energy is energy, whether it comes from a heart or a star engine. She connected the scanner to Tom's navigation system. Now we can see things. The Alliance sensors miss. The display changed, showing new information that had not been there before. Tom pointed to several red dots that appeared and disappeared on the screen. Those are cloaked ships, Captain. Alliance sensors cannot detect them because they only look for what they expect to find. This scanner looks for what should not be. There. Marcus stared at the display. How many Alliance ships carry cloaked vessel detection? Command ships only, Tom replied. And even they can only detect ships they know about. This system learns. It gets better at finding hidden things the more we use it. Dr. Park smiled. Human medicine is about seeing problems that are not obvious. Space navigation has the same challenge. We just applied medical thinking to military problems. Marcus spent the rest of the day checking on other work areas. The crew had taken apart everything the aliens had given them and put it back together in ways that made no sense according to Alliance engineering standards. But everything worked. The communication system used medical equipment to boost signal strength. The life support system borrowed technology from mining equipment to clean air better than Alliance standard. The hull was made from pieces of 6 different ship types, creating armor that was weak in some places but incredibly strong in others. It is like a puzzle, Lisa explained when Marcus asked about the design philosophy. The aliens gave us pieces from different puzzles, but we made them fit together by changing how we think about the problem. That evening, Marcus stood alone. In the captain's quarters they had built from a storage container. Through the small window he could see other Alliance ships docked at the station. They were sleek, elegant, and followed design principles that had worked for thousands of years. His ship looked like a monster made from spare parts, but it was starting to look like a monster that could fight. The door chimed, and Lisa entered, without waiting for permission. Captain, we need to talk about testing. This ship is ready for basic systems checks, but we have no idea how everything will work together under real conditions. What do you recommend? We test it the way humans always test things. We push it until something breaks, then we fix it and push harder. Lisa grinned. The aliens expect us to fail. Let's see what happens when we succeed instead. Marcus looked out the window again at the elegant Alliance ships. Soon, they would see what humans could build from garbage. He thought the aliens might be surprised. Schedule the first test flight for tomorrow, he said. Let's see what this monster can do. The UES Defiance looked even uglier in space than it had in the cargo bay. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command chair, which had been built from the pilot's seat of a mining vessel, and watched the Alliance station grow smaller through the main viewer. All systems showing green, Captain, Lisa Torres reported from the engineering station. Her console was a collection of screens and controls from at least 4 different alien species, but somehow it all worked together. Navigation is stable, Tom Rivers added. Though I have to say our engine signature is unusual. Marcus could hear the surprise in Tom's voice. Unusual how? Well, Captain, most ships produce a clean subspace signature when they travel. Easy to track, easy to identify. But our engines... Tom paused, checking his readings again. Our signature looks like noise, random static. If I did not know better, I would think our sensors were broken. Dr. Elena Park looked up from her medical station, which now doubled as a sensor monitoring post. That might be because we are using 3 different engine types at the same time. Each one produces its own signature, and they are interfering with each other. Is that bad? Marcus asked. Lisa laughed from the engineering station. Captain, that is wonderful. It means we are almost invisible to long-range sensors. Anyone looking for us will see what looks like background radiation. The ship shuddered slightly as they entered normal flight speed. Marcus gripped his chair arms, but the shaking stopped after a few seconds. Sorry about that, Lisa called out. The 3 engine systems need a moment to sync up. I am still working on the timing. How long until we reach the test zone? Marcus asked. 15 minutes, Tom replied. I picked an area with some old asteroids. If something goes wrong, we will not hit anything important. Marcus nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. All crew, this is the captain. We are beginning our first real test flight. Everyone stay alert and report anything unusual immediately. The next 15 minutes passed quietly. The ship ran smoothly, with only small vibrations from the mismatched engines. Marcus began to relax. Maybe they had actually built something that worked. Approaching test zone, Tom announced. There are some old mining asteroids here, good targets for weapons testing. Excellent, Jake Morrison said from the weapons station. I have been waiting to see what this thing can really do. Marcus was about to give the order to begin weapons testing when Dr. Park suddenly sat up straight at her sensor station. Captain, I am reading something strange. There are ships out there. What kind of ships? Marcus asked, his relaxation disappearing. I am not sure. The sensors show empty space, but the medical scanner is detecting energy patterns that should not be there. Tom checked his navigation display. I do not see anything. Space looks clear to me. Wait, Dr. Park said, adjusting controls on her hybrid medical scanner. The energy patterns are moving. Captain, I think we have cloaked ships nearby. Marcus felt cold. Cloaked ships in Alliance space usually meant pirates or worse. How many? At least 3, possibly more. They are positioned around the asteroid field like they are waiting for something. Or someone, Marcus said grimly. Tom, any Alliance ships scheduled to be in this area? Checking. Yes, Captain. A supply convoy is supposed to pass through here in about 10 minutes. Marcus understood immediately. The cloaked ships were waiting to ambush the convoy. Alliance sensors would not detect them until it was too late. Jake, are our weapons ready? Ready and eager, Captain. But we have never tested them in real combat. Today, we find out if they work. Marcus opened a communication channel. Alliance Station Alpha 7, this is UES Defiance. We have detected hostile ships preparing to ambush supply convoy Charlie 9. Request permission to engage. The response came back immediately. UES Defiance, this is Alliance Control. We show no hostile contacts in your area. Are you certain of your readings? Dr. Park was studying her sensors carefully. Captain, the ships are definitely there. They are moving into attack positions now. Alliance Control, we are certain. Our sensors detect 3 cloaked vessels in ambush formation. Recommend you warn the convoy. There was a long pause before Alliance Control responded. UES Defiance, standard sensors show clear space. However, convoy Charlie 9 will be advised to use caution. You are authorized to investigate, but do not engage unless fired upon. Marcus closed the communication channel. Tom, take us closer to those ships, slowly. Captain, Lisa warned. If we get too close and they decloak, we will be in the middle of 3 hostile ships with nowhere to run. Then we better make sure we are ready to fight. The Defiance moved carefully through the asteroid field. On the main viewer, space looked empty and peaceful. But Dr. Park tracked the invisible ships on her sensors. calling out their positions as they moved. Contact 1 is moving behind that large asteroid. Contact 2 is positioning above the convoy. Root. Contact 3 is... Captain, Contact 3 is turning toward us. They know we can see them, Marcus realized. Jake, target Contact 3 and prepare to fire. How do I target something I cannot see? Use Dr. Park's sensor data. Feed it directly to the weapons system. Jake worked frantically at his controls. This is crazy, Captain. I am targeting empty. Space based on medical scanner readings. Sometimes crazy works better than normal. Suddenly, space erupted in weapons fire. The cloaked ships had given up hiding and opened fire on the Defiance, but their shots passed through empty space where the ship should have been. They cannot get a target lock on us, Tom reported with excitement. Our strange engine signature is confusing their targeting systems. Jake, return fire. Show them what human ingenuity looks like. Jake pressed his trigger, and the Defiance's hybrid weapon system roared to life. The combination of Voltani precision, Krell power, and Nexari speed created a beam of energy that tore through space like a sword of light. The beam struck something invisible, and suddenly a ship appeared, spinning out of control with a massive hole in its side. Target hit, Jake shouted. The hybrid system works. The other two hostile ships decloaked, revealing sleek predator vessels that Marcus recognized as pirate raiders. They opened fire with everything they had, but the Defiance's patchwork armor absorbed the attacks in unexpected ways. Hull integrity, holding, Lisa reported. The layered armor from different species is spreading the damage across multiple systems. We are hurt, but not broken. Dr. Park called out new targets as the pirates tried to maneuver for better shots. Jake fired again and again, each shot guided by medical sensors that could see what military sensors missed. Within 5 minutes, 2 pirate ships were destroyed, and the third was fleeing into deep space. Alliance control. This is UES Defiance. Hostile ships have been neutralized. Convoy Charlie 9 is safe to proceed. The response from Alliance control was different this time. Less dismissive, more respectful. UES Defiance. Excellent work. How did you detect cloaked ships with your sensor systems? Marcus smiled. Human medical technology, Alliance control. We see problems that others miss. As the convoy safely passed through the asteroid field, Marcus looked around his bridge at his crew of misfits operating their ship built from garbage. They had just done something that should have been impossible. The aliens had given them scrap and expected them to fail. Instead, they had built something that could see the invisible and fight the impossible. Tom set course back to the station. I think we have some people to surprise. The emergency alarm screamed through Alliance Station Alpha 7 at 0300 hours. Captain Marcus Webb rolled out of his bunk and was dressed before his feet hit the floor. 6 months of building a ship from junk had taught him to move fast when things went wrong. All crew to stations, he called over the ship's communication system as he ran toward the bridge. This is not a drill. The UES Defiance was docked at the station's outer ring, far from the important ships. The Alliance still treated them like the ugly stepchild, even after their success with the pirates. But that distance meant they could launch quickly without waiting for clearance. Lisa Torres was already in the engine room when Marcus reached the bridge. Captain, I heard the station alarm. What's happening? Unknown, Marcus replied, sliding into his command chair. Tom, get me Alliance control on the comm. Tom Rivers worked his controls, and the voice of the station commander filled the bridge. Massive attack on Supply Depot Gamma 7. 17 enemy ships confirmed. All available vessels respond immediately. This is a code red emergency. Doctor. Elena Park looked up from her sensor station. Captain, Gamma 7 is a major supply hub. If it falls, 3-star systems will be cut off from food and medical supplies. How far? Marcus asked. Tom checked his navigation computer. 2 hours at maximum speed for a normal Alliance ship. But we are not normal. Marcus activated the ship-wide comm. All hands prepare for emergency departure. We are going into combat. The Defiance undocked from the station without waiting for permission. As they cleared the docking bay, Marcus opened a channel to Alliance control. Station Alpha 7, this is UES Defiance requesting permission to respond to the Gamma 7 emergency. There was a long pause before the reply came. UES Defiance, this is Admiral Stone. Negative on your request. You are not ready for major combat operations. Admiral, with respect, we have proven our capabilities. Our ship can reach Gamma 7 faster than your other vessels. Absolutely not. The enemy has 17 ships, heavy cruisers and battleships. You would be destroyed in minutes. Marcus looked around his bridge at his crew of misfits. Jake Morrison was checking his weapon systems. Dr. Park was monitoring long-range sensors. Tom was plotting the fastest course to Gamma 7. Lisa's voice came from the engine room reporting that all systems were ready for maximum power. Admiral, Marcus said calmly, we are already en route. UES Defiance out. He closed the channel before the Admiral could respond and turned to his crew. Well, people, looks like we are going to find out if our monster can fight real monsters. The trip to Gamma 7 took 90 minutes instead of 2 hours. The Defiance's mismatched engines, working together in their strange harmony, pushed the YAO ship faster than its designers had thought possible. But as they approached the supply depot, what they saw made everyone fall silent. The depot was under siege. 17 enemy ships surrounded the station like wolves around wounded prey. The attackers were from the Hegemony, a coalition of aggressive species that wanted to push the Alliance out of this sector. Their ships were sleek, modern, and built for war. Captain, Tom said quietly, those are not pirates. Those are military vessels. Each one is bigger and better armed than we are. How many Alliance ships are defending? Marcus asked. Dr. Park checked her sensors. 3 ships, Captain. A cruiser and 2 frigates. They are taking heavy damage. As they watched, one of the Alliance frigates exploded in a ball of fire. The remaining 2 ships were trying to protect the station, but they were outnumbered 8-1. Jake, can our weapons hurt those ships? Jake studied his targeting display. Captain, those are full military vessels with heavy armor and shields. Our hybrid weapons are powerful, but I have never tested them against real warships. Today, we find out, Marcus said. Tom, take us in. Use the asteroid field to mask our approach. The Defiance moved carefully through the rocks and debris that surrounded Gamma 7. The ship's strange sensor signature made them almost invisible among the asteroids. The enemy ships were focused on the station and did not notice one more piece, a floating junk. We have one advantage, Dr. Park reported. They do not know we exist. Their sensors cannot identify us properly. Marcus studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were arranged in attack formation, but they were positioned for fighting other Alliance vessels with standard capabilities. They had no idea what the Defiance could do. Jake, I want you to target their command ship, the big one in the center. Hit it with everything we have. Captain, that ship has shields and armor that should stop our weapons, should stop normal weapons. Marcus corrected. We do not use normal weapons. The Defiance emerged from the asteroid field like a ghost. For a moment, no one noticed the ugly ship with its patchwork hull and mismatched parts. Then Jake opened fire. The hybrid weapons system roared to life. Voltani precision-guided Krell mass drivers while Nexari energy cores overcharged the entire system. The result was a beam of pure destruction that no one had ever seen before. The beam struck the Hegemony command ship's shields and punched straight through. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons or kinetic weapons, but not both at the same time. The shot tore through the ship's hull and exploded inside the engine room. Direct hit, Jake shouted. Their command ship is dead in space. The enemy fleet turned toward the Defiance, but their targeting computers could not get a lock. The ship's chaotic engine signature confused their systems, making the Defiance look like sensor noise instead of a target. Return fire incoming, Dr. Park warned. Multiple ships targeting us. The enemy weapons lit up space with destruction, but most of the shots missed. The few that hit struck the Defiance's layered armor, which spread the damage across multiple hull sections from different alien species. Each layer was weak alone, but together they created protection that was stronger than the sum of its parts. Hull integrity at 80%, Lisa reported from engineering. The mixed armor is working better than I hoped. Marcus gripped his command chair as the ship shook from enemy fire. Jake, keep shooting. Target their engines and weapon systems. The Defiance danced through the enemy formation like a wolf among sheep. The hybrid weapon system fired again and again, each shot precisely aimed by medical sensors that could see through the enemy's electronic countermeasures. One by one, the hegemony ships began to fall. Their weapons could not target the Defiance properly, while Jake's shots found weak points that standard Alliance weapons would have missed. "Captain," Tom called out, "the remaining Alliance ships are moving to support us." The Alliance cruiser and frigate, damaged but still fighting, began coordinating their attacks with the Defiance. Together, they caught the enemy ships in crossfire that left nowhere to run. Within 30 minutes, 12 enemy ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 5 fled into deep space, their mission a complete failure. "All ships, this is Alliance. Cruiser Valor," came a voice over the communication system. "Excellent work, UES Defiance. You saved the station and probably 3 star systems." Marcus leaned back in his command chair, feeling the exhaustion of combat settling into his bones. Around him, his crew was checking systems and counting damage, but they were all smiling. "Tom, set course for home. I think we have proven our point." As the Defiance limped away from Gamma 7, Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the debris of enemy ships. The aliens had given them garbage and expected them to fail. Instead, they had built something that could face 17 warships and win. The galaxy was about to learn that human ingenuity was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. 2 weeks after the battle at Gamma 7, Captain Marcus Webb sat in a conference room that was far too fancy for someone like him. The walls were made of polished metal that reflected the light from expensive crystal fixtures. Around the curved table sat representatives from 12 different alien species, all of them staring at him like he was some kind of dangerous animal. Admiral Stone, the human representative to the Alliance Council, sat beside Marcus looking uncomfortable. The Admiral had spent his career trying to fit in with the alien powers, and now his own species had built something that made everyone nervous. "Captain Webb," said the Council chairman, a tall being with silver skin and too many eyes, "your ship's performance at Gamma 7 has raised many questions about human capabilities." Marcus kept his face neutral. "We did our job, sir. We protected Alliance civilians and destroyed enemy forces." "Yes," hissed the reptilian representative. "But how? Your ship should not have been able to defeat 17 hegemony warships. Our best analyst cannot explain your victory." "Human engineering, sir. We found new ways to use old technology." The blue representative that Marcus remembered from 6 months ago leaned forward. He did not look amused anymore. "Captain, your weapons penetrated shields that should have stopped them. Your armor absorbed damage that should have destroyed you. Your sensors detected targets that military scanners missed. This is not just engineering. This is something else." Dr. Elena Park, who sat beside Marcus as the ship's science officer, spoke up. "If I may, Council Chairman, we simply applied medical and civilian technologies to military problems. Human medicine focuses on seeing hidden problems and fixing them with whatever tools are available." The Rocky representative made a sound like grinding stone. "You turned medical scanners into targeting systems. You used mining equipment for ship engines. You combined weapons from 3 different species into something new. This is not normal thinking." "No," Marcus agreed. "It is human thinking." The room fell silent. Marcus could see the aliens exchanging glances, communicating in ways humans could not detect. Finally, the Council chairman spoke again. "Captain Webb, the Alliance has a proposal for humanity. We would like to purchase your ship designs and integrate them into the standard fleet." "With respect, sir, that would not work. Our designs only function because humans built them. Each system requires constant adjustment and creative problem solving. Alliance engineers prefer standardized solutions." Admiral Stone cleared his throat. "What the captain means is that human methods are unconventional. They might be difficult to replicate." The Voltani representative, whose species had contributed the precision targeting systems, looked directly at Marcus. "Captain, we have studied the wreckage from Gamma 7. Your weapons used our technology in ways we never imagined. How did you know it would work?" "We did not know," Marcus replied honestly. We tested different combinations until we found something that worked better than the original designs. You experimented, the chairman said slowly. You took proven technology and deliberately changed it without knowing the outcome. Yes, sir. Another long silence filled the room. Marcus began to understand that he had said something that frightened. These beings. The Alliance had survived for thousands of years by using technology that was safe, predictable, and tested. Humans had taken that technology and made it into something unpredictable. The Krell representative, whose people had built the mass drivers in the Defiance's weapons, spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Captain, how many more ships like yours could humanity build? Marcus exchanged a glance with Admiral Stone. That depends on how much scrap material the Alliance gives us, sir. This is no longer about scrap, the chairman said firmly. Your victory at Gamma 7 has changed the balance of power in this sector. The hegemony will not underestimate human ships again. Neither will we. The chairman activated a holographic display showing the Alliance fleet. Hundreds of ships appeared in the air above the table, each one following standard design principles that had worked for millennia. Captain Webb, we are offering humanity a full partnership in Alliance military development. Your people will receive the best materials, the most advanced technology, and unlimited resources to build a fleet. Marcus studied the hologram. Every ship looked the same, clean, efficient, and predictable. What would you want in return? Standardization, the blue representative said quickly. Human designs must follow Alliance safety protocols. Human weapons must use approved configurations. Human ships must integrate with existing fleet operations. You want us to build normal ships, Marcus said. We want you to build safe ships, the chairman corrected. Marcus stood up from his chair and walked over to the holographic fleet. He pointed to one of the sleek Alliance cruisers. This ship can defeat any single enemy vessel in a fair fight, but it cannot see cloaked ships, it cannot adapt to new threats, and it cannot repair itself with salvaged materials. He turned back to face the council. Our ship is ugly, unpredictable, and breaks down regularly, but it can do things your ships cannot do. That is exactly what concerns us, the reptilian representative said. The chairman deactivated the hologram and looked directly at Marcus. Captain, the Alliance values stability. Your methods create uncertainty. Sometimes uncertainty is an advantage, and sometimes it is dangerous. What if other species begin experimenting with technology the way humans do? What if they create weapons we cannot predict or defend against? Marcus began to understand the real problem. The Alliance was not afraid of human ships. They were afraid of human thinking. They were afraid that other species might start questioning the old ways and trying new combinations. Council Chairman, Marcus said carefully, humanity appreciates the Alliance offer, but we will continue building ships our way. If you want predictable allies, there are many species to choose from. If you want allies who can surprise your enemies, you need humans. The room erupted in angry voices speaking in a dozen alien languages. The chairman called for order, but Marcus could see that several representatives were afraid. They had created something they could not control. Admiral Stone grabbed Marcus by the arm. Captain, perhaps we should reconsider. No, Marcus said firmly. The Alliance gave us garbage and expected us to fail. We turned their garbage into the most dangerous ship in the galaxy. Now they want to tell us how to think. The chairman raised his hand for silence. Captain Webb, you misunderstand our intentions. We seek cooperation, not control. Then cooperate with us as we are, not as you want us to be. Marcus picked up his hat and headed for the door. Dr. Park, we have work to do. There are more human crews to train and more ships to build. As they left the conference room, Marcus could hear the aliens arguing behind them. Some wanted to restrict human shipbuilding. Others wanted to learn from it. A few were already planning to steal human techniques for their own fleets. 3 months later, Marcus stood in Shipyard Delta 12, watching construction of the 5th human vessel. Each ship was different, built by crews who had learned to see possibilities instead of limitations. They were all ugly, all unpredictable, and all dangerous. The Alliance had given humanity scrap and expected failure. Instead, they had awakened, something that would change how the galaxy thought about war, technology, and the power of creative thinking. Jake Morrison walked up beside him, carrying plans for a new weapon system that combined mining lasers with shield generators. "Captain, the aliens are asking for another meeting. They want to discuss mutual technological cooperation." Marcus smiled as he watched human engineers turning alien junk into something wonderful and terrible. "Tell them we are busy. We have ships to build." In the darkness of space, the UES Defiance patrolled the border, its mismatched hull reflecting starlight like a promise and a warning. The galaxy would never be the same. The celebration bells rang across every ship in the Galactic Federation fleet. After 23 years of bloody war, they had finally won. The last human was in chains. Marcus Kane sat quietly in the transport ship's holding cell, his hands bound with energy shackles that glowed blue in the dim light. The alien guards kept their distance even though he was locked behind 3 layers of force fields. They had heard the stories. Every soldier in the galaxy had heard the stories about what humans could do. Commander Bell of the Unified World stood outside Kane's cell, watching him through the energy barrier. She was tall and thin, with pale green skin and large black eyes that never blinked. Her people were known for their calm nature and logical thinking. But when she looked at Kane, she felt something her species rarely experienced: fear. "He doesn't look like much," said Captain Ford, a young officer with blue scales covering his reptilian face. "Just another prisoner." Belle shook her head slowly. "That's what makes him dangerous. Humans never look like what they really are." Kane lifted his head and stared directly at them. His brown eyes were calm, almost bored. He had been fighting aliens for most of his adult life, and he looked tired. But there was something else in his expression, a cold intelligence that made Belle's skin crawl. "How many ships did it take to capture him?" Ford asked. 47, Belle replied. "We lost 12 of them." Ford's eyes widened. 12 ships? For one human? He wasn't alone then. He had a crew of 8 humans with him. They held off our entire attack force for 6 hours before their ship finally broke apart. Kane smiled slightly when he heard this. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew secrets that others didn't. The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the small window they could see Titan Station, a massive prison built around a dead star. It was the most secure facility in the galaxy, designed to hold the worst criminals and war prisoners. Now it would hold the last human, Admiral. Rex of the Korthic Empire was waiting for them when they docked. He was a huge creature, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor plating covering his entire body. His people were warriors, bred for battle, but even they had learned to fear humans during the war. "So this is the famous Marcus Kane," Rex said, his voice deep and rumbling. "The human who destroyed 3 of our colonies. The monster who taught other humans how to turn our own weapons against us." Kane looked up at the massive admiral without any sign of fear. "Your weapons were easy to figure out. You build them too complicated. Humans keep things simple." Rex's armor plates rattled with anger. "Simple? You call what you did simple? You turned children into soldiers. You used civilians as shields. You broke every law of civilized warfare." "I won battles," Kane said quietly. "That's what matters in war." General Tom of the Reptilian Council stepped forward. He was older than the others, with scars covering his green scales. He had fought humans for 15 years and survived when many others didn't. "That's exactly why you're dangerous," Tom said. "Other species fight with honor. We have rules. We try to minimize death and suffering. But humans—" He paused, studying Kane's face. "Humans fight to win, no matter what it costs." Kane was moved to his cell deep inside Titan Station. It was a small room with no windows, surrounded by energy barriers and guard stations. The walls were made of metal that could survive a nuclear blast. But Kane wasn't looking at the walls. He was watching the guards. There were 4 different species guarding him. 2 reptilians, 1 insect-like creature, and 1 that looked almost like a living rock. They all carried different weapons and wore different armor. Kane studied each, one carefully, noting how they moved, how they held their weapons, how often they checked their equipment. "Planning your escape already?" asked Dr. White, the prison's chief medical officer. She was human-looking, but with silver skin and no hair. Her people were known for their ability to read emotions. "Just looking around," Kane replied. Dr. White activated a scanner and pointed it at Kane. "Your stress levels are completely normal. Your heart rate hasn't changed since you arrived. Most prisoners are terrified when they first see this place." "I'm not most prisoners." "No, you're not." She put away the scanner. "You're the last of your kind. How does that feel?" Kane was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Lonely." But Dr. White's scanner had detected something else. Kane wasn't just calm. He was planning. His brain was working constantly, processing information, calculating possibilities. Even locked in the most secure prison in the galaxy, Marcus Kane was still fighting. That night, as the station settled into its sleep cycle, Kane lay on his narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. The guards thought he was defeated. They thought capturing him meant the human threat was over. They were wrong. Humans had always been underestimated. When the aliens first found Earth, they saw a primitive species that had barely reached their own moon. They expected easy conquest. Instead, they found creatures that adapted faster than anyone thought possible. Kane remembered the early days of the war. Humans had inferior technology and smaller numbers, but they learned quickly. They studied every alien weapon they could find. They captured enemy soldiers and questioned them. They discovered that most alien species followed the same patterns, used the same tactics, thought in the same ways. And then humans began to change the rules. Where aliens saw honor in battle, humans saw opportunities. Where aliens showed mercy to defeated enemies, humans pressed their advantages. Where aliens tried to minimize civilian casualties, humans used every resource available. The galaxy had called them monsters, war criminals, savages who didn't deserve to exist among civilized species. Kane closed his eyes and smiled in the darkness. Let them think what they wanted. Let them believe they had won. The war was over, but Marcus Kane was still thinking. Still planning, still fighting, because the one thing the galaxy had never understood about humans was this: they never gave up. Even when they were alone, even when they were outnumbered, even when they were the last one left. And Marcus Kane had learned something during his years of fighting that the aliens didn't know yet. He had learned their weaknesses. All of them. Every species in the Federation had flaws that could be exploited. fears that could be used against them. Someday, that knowledge might be useful. Someday the galaxy might need someone who understood how to fight dirty, how to break rules, how to win at any cost. But for now, Kane would wait, and watch, and remember everything, because he was human, and humans were very, very dangerous. 3 months after Marcus Kane's capture, the first distress signal came from the outer rim of the galaxy. Admiral Rex was in his command center when the message arrived. The hologram showed a terrified Korthak captain, his armor cracked and smoking. Behind him, explosions lit up the bridge of his ship. "Admiral, we need immediate backup. The enemy. They're not like anything we've ever seen. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, they just consume everything." The transmission cut to static. Rex stared at the empty hologram projector for a long moment. In 40 years of military service, he had never heard such fear in a Korthak warrior's voice. His people were bred for battle. They didn't scare easily. "Send a scout fleet to investigate," he ordered his second-in-command. The scout fleet never came back. Within a week, 3 more star systems went silent. Long-range sensors showed something impossible. Entire planets were disappearing. Not destroyed, not conquered, but completely gone, leaving behind empty space where worlds used to be. Commander Bell arrived at Titan Station with an emergency council meeting. Representatives from all major species sat around a circular table, their faces showing the same emotion, panic. "We're calling them the Void Swarm," Bell explained, activating a holographic display. "They appear to be mechanical beings, but unlike any AI we've encountered. They don't want territory or resources in the traditional sense. They convert matter directly into more of themselves." General Tom leaned forward, his old scales creaking. "How many ships do they have?" "That's the problem, we don't know. Every time we destroy one, 10 more appear. It's like fighting a forest fire with a water gun." Dr. White, who had been studying the data, spoke up. "Their technology is completely alien, not built like anything in our databases. And they seem to have no individual consciousness. They act as one massive organism." Admiral Rex slammed his armored fist on the table. "Then we fight them like we fight any enemy. Mass our fleets, use our superior firepower, drive them back. We tried that," Bell said quietly. "The first battle fleet we sent had 200 ships, elite forces from 6 different species. The swarm consumed them in less than an hour." The room fell silent. 200 ships was enough firepower to conquer most star systems. The idea that they could be destroyed so quickly was terrifying. "What do they want?" asked Captain Ford. "Everything," Bell replied. "They want to consume the entire galaxy." For the next month, the Federation tried everything they could think of. Massive fleet engagements failed, defensive lines were overrun. Evacuation efforts barely stayed ahead of the advancing swarm. Traditional military tactics that had worked for thousands of years proved useless. The swarm didn't follow the rules of civilized warfare. They didn't care about their own losses. They didn't retreat when outnumbered. They didn't negotiate or communicate. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. General Tom found himself staring at casualty reports that made no sense. Entire fleets destroyed with minimal damage to the enemy. Planets stripped bare in hours. The Federation was losing the war so badly that some species were already discussing surrender, if the swarm even accepted surrender. That's when Dr. White made her suggestion. "There is someone who might be able to help," she said during an emergency meeting. "Someone who understands unconventional warfare." Admiral Rex's armor plates rattled with anger. "If you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, Marcus, Kane has fought against impossible odds before," Dr. White continued. "He's the expert on warfare that breaks all the rules." "He's a war criminal," Rex shouted. "A monster who turned children into soldiers. And right now he might be our only chance," General Tom said quietly. The old reptilian looked tired. "The swarm doesn't follow our rules. Maybe we need someone who doesn't follow rules either." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that working with Kane would be betraying everything the Federation stood for. Others pointed out that there wouldn't be a Federation left to stand for anything if the swarm wasn't stopped. Finally, Commander Bell made the decision. "I'll talk to him." Kane was sitting on his bed when Bell entered his cell. He looked exactly the same as the day he arrived, calm, patient, dangerous. But there was something different in his eyes when he saw her expression. "Let me guess," Kane said. "Something's gone wrong and you need the human monster to fix it." Bell activated a holographic display showing the swarm's advance. Red dots marked consumed systems, slowly spreading across the galaxy like a disease. They call themselves the Void Swarm. They've destroyed 47 star systems in 6 weeks. Every fleet we send against them gets consumed. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, they just consume everything and move on. Kane studied the display carefully. His eyes tracked the swarm's movement patterns, the timing of their attacks, the systems they chose to hit first. "Interesting," he said finally. "Interesting. They're destroying the galaxy." "No, they're not." Kane stood up and walked closer to the hologram. "They're harvesting it. Look at the pattern. They hit industrial systems first, then military bases, then civilian populations. They're not just consuming matter randomly. They're targeting specific resources." Bell felt a chill run down her spine. Kane had figured out something in minutes that Federation analysts had missed for weeks. "What do you want?" she asked. Kane smiled. That same cold, calculating smile that had terrified aliens across the galaxy. "Full tactical command, access to all military assets, and no questions about my methods." "That's impossible. The Federation Council would never." "Then the Federation will be consumed," Kane said simply. "Your choice." Bell stared at him for a long moment. Kane wasn't desperate or begging. He was stating facts. The swarm was winning, the Federation was losing, and he was offering a solution, at a price. "Why would you help us? We destroyed your species. We hunted your people to extinction." Kane's expression became serious. "Because if the swarm wins, there won't be a galaxy left to rebuild. And despite what you think of humans, we actually like this galaxy." It was interesting. He walked back to his bed and sat down. "Besides, I'm getting bored in here. And humans don't do well when we're bored." Bell left the cell with her mind racing. Kane's offer was dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than the swarm itself. Giving a human tactical command of Federation forces was like handing a knife to someone who had already stabbed you. But as she looked at the latest casualty reports, she realized they might not have a choice. The swarm was consuming the galaxy, and conventional warfare wasn't working. Maybe it was time to try something unconventional. Maybe it was time to let the monster out of his cage. 3 days later, the Federation Council made their decision. Marcus Kane, the last human prisoner, would be given temporary freedom and tactical authority to fight the Void Swarm. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Marcus Kane stood in the Federation's main war room for the first time in 3 months. The energy shackles were gone, but 6 armed guards watched his every move. Around the room, holographic displays showed the Void Swarm's continued advance. 12 more systems consumed in the past week. Admiral Rex glared at Kane from across the table. "Don't think this changes anything, human. You're still a prisoner, still a war criminal." Kane ignored him and studied the tactical displays. Fleet positions, supply lines, evacuation routes, all laid out in perfect detail. Information that would have taken him years to gather during the war was now freely available. "Your first lesson," Kane said, pointing at the largest display, "is that you're fighting the wrong war." General Tom leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "You're trying to beat them in conventional battles. Big fleets, head-to-head combat, honorable engagement." Kane shook his head. "The swarm doesn't care about honor. They don't get tired. They don't retreat. They don't fear death. Fighting them fairly is suicide." Commander Bell activated a recording of the latest battle. Federation ships fired in organized formations while swarm units swarmed around them like angry insects. "What would you do differently?" she asked. Kane smiled coldly. "Everything." The first change Kane made horrified the alien commanders. He ordered Federation fleets to abandon their traditional formations and fight in small, scattered groups. When Admiral Rex protested, Kane had him watch the results. The scattered Federation ships hit swarm units with quick attacks, then retreated. before the enemy could respond. No grand battles, no heroic last stands, just constant harassment that slowly wore down the swarm's numbers. "This is cowardice," Rex roared. "We run from every fight." "And we're winning," Kane replied, showing the casualty reports. For the first time since the war began, Federation losses were lower than swarm losses. But Kane's next order made them even more uncomfortable. "We're going to use suicide attacks," he announced during a strategy meeting. The room erupted in protests. Captain Ford stood up, his scales changing color with emotion. "That's barbaric. Civilized species don't throw away lives like that." Kane looked at him with those cold brown eyes. "The swarm does. Every single unit they have is essentially a suicide weapon. They don't value individual lives because they don't have individual lives. To beat them, we need to think like them." Dr. White, who had been monitoring Kane's psychological state, spoke up. "This violates every treaty on ethical warfare that the Federation has signed." "The swarm didn't sign your treaties," Kane said simply. "The first suicide mission was led by volunteers. Pilots whose homeworlds had already been consumed. Kane equipped their ships with experimental explosives and sent them directly into the heart of a swarm formation. The explosion destroyed more enemy units than any previous attack, but the cost disturbed the Federation commanders. They had always fought to preserve life, even enemy life when possible. Kane's methods went against everything they believed in. General Tom found Kane studying star charts late one night. "How do you sleep?" the old reptilian asked. "Knowing that you sent those pilots to die?" Kane didn't look up from his charts. "The same way you'll sleep tonight, knowing that those pilots saved 3 colonies by dying." "That's different. We didn't choose to sacrifice them." "Yes, you did." Kane finally looked at Tom. "You chose to give me tactical command. Every decision I make is a decision you approved." Tom felt a chill run through his scales. Kane was right. The Federation had made him their weapon, and now they had to live with how he used that power. The next phase of Kane's strategy was even worse. He began targeting swarm command nodes, the central units that coordinated their attacks. But these nodes were usually protected by massive defensive formations. "We'll use false surrenders," Kane announced. Commander Bell stared at him. That's a war crime. You can't fake surrender to gain tactical advantage." "Watch me." Kane's plan was simple and brutal. Federation ships would approach swarm formations broadcasting surrender signals. When the enemy moved to consume them, hidden weapons would activate, destroying the command nodes from within. It worked perfectly. 3 major swarm formations were crippled in a single day. But word of the false surrenders spread through the Federation fleet. Some officers refused to participate. Others questioned whether they were still the good guys if they used such tactics. Captain Ford cornered Kane after one particularly successful mission. "You're turning us into monsters, just like humans." Kane studied the young officer's face. "Good. Monsters might actually survive this war." As weeks passed, Kane's influence over the Federation military grew stronger. Officers who had never considered breaking rules of warfare now planned ambushes and trap attacks. Soldiers who had been taught to show mercy to defeated enemies now fought with ruthless efficiency. The results were undeniable. The swarm's advance had stopped. For the first time since the invasion began, Federation forces were winning battles consistently. But Admiral Rex noticed something disturbing. Kane wasn't just winning battles. He was learning everything about Federation military capabilities. Their ship designs, their communication codes, their supply routes, their defensive positions. "He's mapping our entire military structure," Rex told Bell during a private meeting. "Every tactical briefing gives him more information about our forces." Bell had noticed the same thing. Kane asked detailed questions about fleet compositions, officer training, and resource allocation. Information that would be useful for fighting the swarm but also for fighting the Federation. "Do you think he's planning something?" she asked. Rex's armor plates clicked nervously. "Humans always plan something. The question is whether we'll see it coming." Meanwhile, Kane continued transforming Federation military doctrine. He introduced concepts that had never existed in galactic warfare: total war, acceptable losses, psychological operations, ideas that worked against the swarm but changed the nature of the Federation itself. Dr. White observed these changes with growing concern. The officers under Kane's command are becoming more aggressive, more willing to take risks, more comfortable with violence. He's not just teaching them tactics, he's teaching them to think like humans. Some Federation species began calling Kane the necessary evil, a monster they needed to defeat a greater monster. But others wondered if the cure was becoming worse than the disease. Kane seemed aware of their concerns, but he didn't care. Every day the war continued, he gathered more intelligence about Federation capabilities and weaknesses. Every order he gave taught alien officers more about human military thinking. And deep in his mind, Marcus Kane was still fighting the war that had never really ended. The war between humanity and the galaxy that had destroyed his species. The swarm was just an opportunity, a chance to position himself for what came next. Because Kane had learned something during his months of freedom that the Federation didn't realize yet. They needed him more than he needed them. And that gave him power. Dangerous, growing power that he planned to use very carefully. 6 months into the war against the Void Swarm, Marcus Kane stood over a holographic map of the Centauri system. The entire system was marked in red, completely overrun by swarm forces. 20 billion civilians lived on those worlds. "We evacuate them," Admiral Rex said firmly. "Pull back our fleets and save as many lives as possible." Kane shook his head. "We destroy the system." The war room fell silent. Commander Bell stared at Kane in horror. "That's 20 billion people, innocent civilians. 20 billion people who will be converted into swarm units if we don't act," Kane replied calmly. "The swarm uses organic matter to build new ships, new weapons, new soldiers. Every person they capture makes them stronger." General Tom's old scales trembled with anger. "You're talking about genocide." "I'm talking about mathematics." Kane activated a projection showing swarm expansion rates. If they convert the Centauri population, they'll have enough resources to build a fleet that can overrun the entire inner rim. We'll lose 50 systems instead of 1. Captain Ford stepped forward. "There has to be another way. We can't just murder entire populations to deny them to the enemy." Kane looked at the young officer with something that might have been pity. "This is war, Ford. Real war. Not the polite battles your people are used to. Sometimes saving the galaxy means destroying parts of it." The debate continued for hours, but Kane had already made his decision. He activated emergency military protocols that gave him authority over orbital defense platforms around the Centauri system. Before anyone could stop him, he triggered the platform's self-destruct sequences. The explosions were visible from 3 star systems away. 20 billion lives ended in seconds, along with any chance of the swarm using their resources. Admiral Rex was so angry his armor plates were smoking. "You monster. You're no better than the swarm." "I'm worse," Kane said quietly. "The swarm kills without understanding what they're doing. I know exactly what I did, and I'll do it again if necessary." But Kane's brutal strategy worked. Without the resources from Centauri, the swarm's advance slowed significantly. Federation forces, trained in Kane's ruthless tactics, began winning battles across multiple fronts. However, the victory came at a terrible cost that went beyond lost lives. Dr. White watched the changes in Federation personnel with growing alarm. Officers who had once refused to fire on retreating enemies now showed no mercy. Soldiers who had protected civilians now viewed them as potential resources or liabilities. "They're becoming like him," she told Commander Bell during a private meeting. Kane isn't just teaching them tactics, he's changing their fundamental nature. Bell had noticed the same transformation. Captain Ford, once idealistic and hopeful, now spoke casually about acceptable casualty rates. Young officers, who had joined the military to protect people, now calculated how many lives they could sacrifice to achieve objectives. "Maybe that's what it takes to win," Bell said, though she didn't sound convinced. "Win what? If we become monsters to defeat monsters, what exactly have we saved?" The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Kane's next operation was his most ambitious yet. Intelligence reports showed that the swarm was building a massive construction facility in the Outer Rim, a factory capable of producing thousands of new units per day. Kane decided to destroy it using Federation prisoners of war. Absolutely not, Rex declared when Kane presented the plan. We don't use prisoners as weapons. These prisoners volunteered, Kane replied, showing him the list. 47 Federation, soldiers who were captured by the swarm and then rescued. They want revenge. What Kane didn't mention was how he had convinced them to volunteer. Hours of psychological manipulation, playing on their trauma, their anger, their desire for purpose. After surviving swarm captivity, he had turned broken soldiers into willing weapons. The mission succeeded brilliantly. The swarm facility was completely destroyed, dealing a massive blow to their production capabilities. But when the details of the operation became known, even Kane's supporters began to question his methods. Commander Bell confronted him after reviewing the mission reports. You used torture victims as suicide bombers. These people weren't thinking clearly, they were traumatized, desperate for meaning. Kane didn't deny it. They found meaning. They saved millions of lives by destroying that facility. By throwing their own lives away. By choosing to die for something greater than themselves. Kane's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the words. Every human who ever lived understood that choice. Your people are just learning it now. That night, Bell made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing supply requisitions, she found hidden patterns in Kane's orders. Weapons shipments to remote locations, communication equipment sent to abandoned sectors, food and medical supplies redirected to coordinates that matched no known Federation bases. She traced the patterns and realized the horrible truth. Kane had been building a network throughout Federation space. Not to fight the swarm, but to prepare for something else entirely. Bell called an emergency meeting with the senior command staff. Kane's been using our own supply lines to create hidden bases across the galaxy. He's not just fighting the swarm, he's positioning assets for after the war. Admiral Rex studied the evidence with growing fury. What kind of assets? Everything he needs to restart a human military force. Weapons, ships, supplies, and most importantly, people. General Tom looked confused. People? There are no other humans. Not yet, Bell said grimly. But Kane's been recruiting. Officers who've learned to fight like humans, soldiers who've adopted human tactics, species with human-compatible biology. The truth was even worse than Bell suspected. Kane hadn't just been studying Federation military capabilities. He had been identifying which aliens could be trained to think and fight like humans. His psychological profiles of Federation personnel weren't for military efficiency. They were recruitment assessments. Captain Ford, who had become one of Kane's most successful students, was horrified when he learned the truth. He's been planning this from the beginning. The whole time we thought he was helping us, he was preparing to rebuild humanity. Kane didn't deny the accusations when confronted. Did you think I was doing this out of charity? My species is extinct. My world is a graveyard. Everything I've ever cared about is gone. So you decided to betray the people who freed you? Rex demanded. I decided to ensure that humanity's ideas survive, Kane corrected. Your people will remember what I taught you. How to fight without rules. How to win at any cost. How to be dangerous when you need to be. Bell felt sick as she realized the full scope of Kane's manipulation. You never intended to just help us win the war. You planned to change us into something else entirely. Kane smiled, that cold, calculating smile. I planned to give the galaxy a gift, the knowledge of what it means to fight like a human. Whether you use that gift wisely is up to you. The Federation leadership faced an impossible choice. They needed Kane to finish the war against the swarm, but keeping him free meant allowing him to complete whatever plan he was building. And the worst part was that Kane knew they needed him. The swarm was still advancing, and only Kane's ruthless tactics were holding them back. They were trapped by their own desperation, forced to rely on someone who had been playing a deeper game all along. Kane had taught them to be monsters. Now they had to decide what kind of monsters they wanted to be. The final battle was coming. Deep space sensors showed the void swarm massing at the galaxy's core, building something massive around the ancient black hole that anchored their civilization. Whatever they were constructing would either end the war or end everything else. Marcus Kane stood in the Federation war room one last time, surrounded by officers who no longer trusted him, but still needed him. The evidence of his secret network lay scattered across the table: weapons caches, hidden bases, recruitment lists of aliens who had learned to think like humans. Admiral Rex's armor was scarred from months of brutal warfare. "Why?" he asked. "Simply. Why help us at all if you were planning to betray us?" Kane studied the tactical display showing the swarm's final position. "Because there's no point in rebuilding humanity if there's no galaxy left to live in." Commander Bell activated a recording from their deep space probes. The images showed something impossible. The swarm was building a massive device around the black hole, something that pulsed with energy that hurt to look at. "Our scientists think it's a weapon," she said. "Something that could destroy star systems from across the galaxy." General Tom, older and more tired than ever, leaned forward. "How do we stop it?" Kane smiled grimly. "We don't stop it. We go straight to its heart and destroy it from the inside." Captain Ford studied the readings. "That's suicide. The gravitational forces alone would tear apart any ship before it got close." "Not any ship," Kane corrected. "A ship designed for suicide." Kane's plan was typically brutal and effective. They would build a weapon unlike anything ever created, a ship powered by matter-antimatter annihilation, guided by a human brain linked directly to its navigation systems. Someone would have to pilot it manually through the swarm's defenses and into the weapon's core. "Who pilots it?" Bell asked, though she already knew the answer. "I do," Kane said simply. The room erupted in arguments. Some officers insisted it was too dangerous to trust Kane with such a mission. Others pointed out that no one else understood both human tactics and swarm behavior well enough to succeed. Admiral Rex silenced the debate with a gesture. "You expect us to believe you'll sacrifice yourself to save the galaxy? After everything you've done?" Kane's expression became serious. "I expect you to understand that I've already won." He activated a holographic display showing Federation military units across the galaxy. "Look at your own forces. Really look at them." The display highlighted officers trained in Kane's methods, units using human tactics, entire fleets that had adopted human military doctrine. Red markers showed Kane's hidden assets, but yellow markers showed something else: Federation personnel who had learned to fight like humans without even realizing it. "I didn't just train your soldiers," Kane continued. "I changed your entire military culture. Every officer who learned to break rules of engagement, every captain who chose victory over honor, every general who accepted necessary casualties." Dr. White stared at the display in horror. "You've infected our entire military with human thinking." "I've evolved it," Kane corrected. "The galaxy will never again underestimate the value of human military doctrine, because now it's your doctrine too." The truth was staggering. Kane hadn't just been building a hidden network, he had been transforming the Federation itself. Officers who had learned his methods would teach them to others. Tactics that had proven effective would become standard procedure. The ruthless efficiency of human warfare would spread throughout galactic civilization. Captain Ford, who had become one of Kane's most successful students, finally understood. "You weren't trying to rebuild humanity. You were trying to make us into humans." "Better," Kane said. "I was making you into what humans could have become if we'd had your technology, your resources, your unity." Belle felt sick as she realized the full scope of Kane's victory. "Even if we lock you up again, it's too late. The damage is done." "It's not damage," Kane replied calmly. "It's evolution. The galaxy is a dangerous place. You've learned that the hard way. Now you have the tools to survive it." The debate about Kane's final mission continued for days, but time was running out. The swarm's weapon was nearly complete, and Federation forces were taking massive casualties trying to slow its construction. Finally, General Tom made the decision. Kane pilots the mission, but he goes alone. Kane nodded acceptance. I wouldn't want it any other way. The ship they built for him was a marvel of desperate engineering, a fusion of Federation technology and human design philosophy. Fast, maneuverable, and carrying enough antimatter to crack a small moon. Kane named it Humanity's End. On the day of the mission, Kane stood in the launch bay surrounded by officers who had learned to fight like him. Some still hated him, but all of them respected what he had taught them. Captain Ford approached him before launch. Why are you really doing this? Kane looked at the young officer who had changed from an idealistic rookie into a hardened military commander. Because this is what humans do. We make the hard choices so others don't have to. Admiral Rex watched from the command deck as Kane's ship launched toward the galaxy's core. Do you think he'll actually complete the mission? Commander Bell studied the tactical display. He will. Because this was always his plan. The journey to the swarm's weapon took 3 days. Kane's ship fought through waves of enemy units using every trick and tactic he had ever learned. The Federation fleet followed as close as they could, providing cover fire and drawing off pursuit. As Kane approached the massive construction around the black hole, he opened a final communication channel to the Federation fleet. This is Marcus, Kane, last human in the galaxy. His voice crackled through static. I want you all to remember something. I didn't teach you to be monsters. I taught you to be survivors. The swarm's weapon was even more terrifying up close. A structure the size of a moon, channeling the black hole's energy into something that could reach across space and destroy entire star systems. Kane guided his ship into the weapon's core, past defenses that would have stopped any conventional attack. The antimatter warhead armed itself automatically as he reached the center of the construction. His final transmission reached the Federation fleet just as the weapon's energy beam began charging for its first shot. The galaxy belongs to you now, Kane said. Try not to destroy it before you figure out what to do with it. And remember, being dangerous isn't about being evil. It's about being willing to do what's necessary when everything depends on it. The explosion was visible from 1,000 light-years away. The swarm's weapon vanished in a burst of energy that consumed everything within 10 light-years of the galaxy's core. The black hole itself flickered and died, taking the swarm's central intelligence with it. Across the galaxy, swarm units simply stopped moving. Without their central coordination, they became nothing more than scattered machines, easily mopped up by Federation forces. The war was over. The galaxy was saved, but Marcus Kane's real victory wasn't the defeat of the swarm. It was the transformation of the Federation itself. Military academies began teaching courses on unconventional warfare. Officers learned that sometimes rules needed to be broken. Soldiers understood that victory sometimes required terrible choices. The galaxy had learned to fight like humans, and it would never forget that lesson. Kane was gone. But humanity's legacy lived on in every Federation officer who chose efficiency over honor, in every battle plan that prioritized victory over casualties, in every decision that put survival above principles. The last human had saved the galaxy by teaching it to be human, and that was the most dangerous gift of all.